I'm Makini Smith. After going through a divorce, my sister passing away, experiencing narcissistic abuse, and some significant health scares, I realized through sharing my story that I wasn't alone in my suffering. Suffering, subjective distress generated by the experience of being out of balance. In a deep dive to holistically heal mind, body, and soul is where I discovered peace, clarity, and connection. It is impossible to be truly wise without some real life hardship, and we cannot develop post-traumatic wisdom without making it through, and most importantly, through it together. Social connection builds resilience, and resilience helps create post-traumatic wisdom, and that wisdom leads to hope. Hope for you and others witnessing and participating in your healing, and hope for your community. A healthy community is a healing community, and a healing community is full of hope because it has seen its own people weather, survive, and thrive. Koereyelle Mallard is a wife and mom of two. She's been featured on dozens of media platforms, including Forbes, Essence, Black Enterprise, Huffington Post, and much, much more. Each week, she hosts the award-winning Girl Stop Playing podcast, where she encourages her audience to stop playing with their potential and start working for what they want in life and in love. She's on a mission to encourage Black women to make the money and get the honey. She's the owner of Elevate Media. She has the pleasure of supporting powerhouse entrepreneurs in developing profitable podcasts. Most recently, she launched Grown Woman TV as the first Black woman-owned podcast network and Roku channel created for Black women in an effort to help them make more money and attract their honey. Please welcome to the show, Koereyelle Mallard.
I'm here. So excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for saying yes and agreeing to come back on the show. When it was the A Walk of My Stilettos podcast, I think goodness, we are going into year 6. I think you were on in like the second year. I think it was episode 24. That was 2019 for those of you that are listening. It's been a minute, but I am grateful that we are here. We have both evolved so much. Life has changed so much. So we have so much to discuss. So thank you.
Thank you. Of course. I'm excited to get into this conversation and happy to accept the invitation.
So I loved how today, for those that are listening, earlier today, we recorded an episode on your podcast. And I feel like this is just going to be like a continuation of that on this episode. So I cannot wait. And I'm telling all the listeners from now, make sure they go out and subscribe to your podcast and mine so they can catch the full experience.
Yes, please do. Because that combo, it was good. It was good.
Yes. And, like you said at the end of that conversation, that wasn't necessarily where you intended to go. But I know, God makes things work out how they're supposed to be. Yeah. I had plenty of goosebumps during that conversation. And I think that us digging deeper into mother wounds is important. But before we get into all of that, so I love to start the show with like icebreaker questions just to get a little bit deeper into the childhood version of you. So I would love to know more about, before society shaped you, before your environment shaped you, before you're impacted by all of those things. What or who did you want to be as a little girl?
From as early as I can remember, I always wanted to be a teacher. And that was my first career. So I did actually accomplish that goal and, climb that mountaintop to get there. But that was the one thing that was consistent. Like I never veered away from that goal. Mm-hmm. And I'm still teaching through my podcast, but
absolutely. Absolutely. There's different forms of educating people. And that's what I love about podcasting, being able to educate, inspire, empower. I love that. I would love to know, like, what is your earliest childhood memory that defines who you are today?
Oh, my earliest childhood memory that defines who I am today. Okay. So me and my sister have had a sibling rivalry since the dad was born. Like, I feel like, you know how the kids are like, okay, this baby's cute, but take it back, get it out of here. I feel like she said that, but she was serious. You know, she never got over it. She really wanted me to go away. And so we always were like fighting, and not like the like love hate, like a love hate relationship. It was like a hate relationship. Like, we were always fighting. And she was the big sister, 4 years older than me. So she always won every fight. But I remember being 4 years old, and she had chicken pox, and she was doing something to bother me. And I picked up a sharpened pencil and I tossed it across the room, and it popped a chicken pox on her forehead. And I remember the sense of pride, the feeling that I felt in my heart, that I felt like David had defeated Goliath. Like that. So y'all are probably looking like, girl, you are crazy for saying this. But that to me was not necessarily a defining moment. But I think that I have always had the tenacity to know that I'm gonna, like, if you could play with me all day, but I'm gonna get mine. I'm going to, regardless of how long it takes, regardless of you thought I was down, I'm not out. And so I think that has been, I haven't ever tossed a pencil at anybody else, and I'm not a violent person, but that was like my first like get back moment that gave me that sense of, you know, people will play with you all day long. They might think they're bigger. They might think they're smarter. They might think they're stronger, but one day you're going to get your chance to get them back.
I love that.
Don't judge me, guys. Sorry.
Listen, this is a judgment-free zone. This is a safe
I'm here to be honest.
We're talking about our healing journey and how we've evolved.
I'm here to be honest.
I love it. So you talked about, as a child, always wanting to be a teacher and then getting into the teaching profession. And the last time that we really spoke and dug deep into each other's journey was in 2019. So I would love for the listeners who are just tuning in today, if you could tell them a little bit about your journey and how you got to where you are presently.
Oh, very long story short. Y'all gonna have to go back and catch that episode. Yeah. But very long story short, I started out as a classroom teacher. I taught second and third grade straight out of college. I entered that profession not necessarily thinking that I would retire. Like, I didn't think that I was going to be the little teacher with gray hair that's like, I've been here for 50 years. I never thought I would get to that point, but I didn't really have a plan for anything else outside of teaching. And if I ever thought about what I could possibly do, I knew I didn't want to be an administrator, but I thought maybe I could go work for like a textbook company or develop curriculums or something. But I just knew that I was going to work in education because that's what society told me. This is what your degree is in, and teachers got to teach. Teachers have to stay in education. There's no career path that leads you anywhere else as an educator, traditionally. And so I got into that job. This, again, like I mentioned, I wanted to be a teacher from as little as I can remember. Didn't even make it through my very first year as a teacher without feeling like, okay, there has to be more. This cannot be it. This is not what I thought it was. And I loved teaching. So I love the kids though. I didn't love anything outside of the classroom. Like, I didn't want to deal with the adults in the building. I didn't want to go to the staff meetings where this could have been an email. I don't want to sit and, go through the corporate rigmarole that has nothing to do with the quality of education. Like, I was just uninterested in anything that didn't have to do with the students and learning. And so life came at me fast, and a personal trauma ended up getting me out of the classroom. So I was engaged to be married. It ended up being an abusive relationship. And the shame of ending that engagement led me to just try to figure out, like, how can I run away? And so my running away, I had gotten a job to teach in Abu Dhabi. I was literally going to leave this life behind. Okay. I was going to go start anew. And I ended up having a real moment with myself where I really had to think about what my motives were and why was I really about to make this move. And literally less than 30 days from the time I was supposed to leave, decided not to go, and kind of found myself in between. And so that's how I ended up getting out of classroom. Actually, I didn't have this moment of like, I have this faith in myself and I'm going to find my wings on the way. I didn't do none of that. I literally just kind of ended up in between jobs. Didn't go back to education. And that was kind of the start of my entrepreneurial journey. I started building women empowerment brands way back when, launched my first one in 2012, which was the Single Wives Club. Coming out of that abusive relationship and being engaged and knowing that I was not prepared to be a wife and wanting to figure out how to prepare to become a wife, and trying to create an organization to help other women. And so that was kind of the start of my journey in entrepreneurship and in women empowerment. And since 2012, I have been hosting events, hosting the podcast, writing books. And yeah, it's kind of just evolved as I learn new things and go through things. My business and my brand reflects that. So now I'm in this season of just exploring wellness, like really living well. And, you know, that's kind of the area that I'm in right now with the work that I'm doing.
So there's so much that I want to unpack there. I don't even know where to start.
A lot, right?
So much I want to unpack. Okay, let's see if I can remember it all. So let's go back to actually a little bit something that we spoke about earlier on your podcast about our childhood wounds and how they shape who we are. And, you know, we're all like these adults walking around with our trauma responses today if we don't work on our healing, right? So knowing that, you know, as a child, you wanted to be an educator, you and your sister always had this sibling rivalry, and then you experienced this traumatic breakup, this abusive relationship, and you want to run away from it all. I think that also speaks to your trauma response at the time, right? So I guess my first question would be, what did you learn about emotions growing up, and how has it helped you or hurt you?
Nada, nothing, zero. On my journey, I have realized that I grew up with emotionally immature parents. And I'm not going to say like emotionally abusive, but emotionally immature. Like there was no development in their emotions. And as an adult, it is very obvious, you know, that there still is a lack of emotional maturity, emotional intelligence. And when I think about the impact that has had on me throughout my life, I didn't realize the root of it. I didn't realize that I didn't learn how to process my emotions or how to recognize my triggers or how to, talk myself down off the ledge. These are like things that I had to learn and develop as a grown ass woman in therapy. You know, like these are not things that I was taught as a child. And so I would have to say, nothing. I don't think that I was, my parents were military parents. And so the mantra in our house was like, man up. And it's just me and my sister. My mama don't have no sons, but it was man up. Everything was man up. Everything was, it was always man up, like figure it out, get over it, get through it. You'll work it out. It was never stop and pause. Let's talk about it. In fact, a big part of not a big part of the problem, but a reoccurring kind of conversation in my childhood was my mom and my sister referring to me as being the sensitive one. I'm the sensitive one. I'm the one who feels all the things. I'm the one that, will cry at the drop of a dime. So I think that their lack of emotional intelligence hindered me in making me even less, emotionally intelligent, because I felt like I had to hide my emotions or keep them to myself.
Wow. Like, okay, so I strongly believe that our pain births our purpose. And when you experienced those traumatic things in your past, I feel like it led you down this path that you're on now of women empowerment, of wellness. It's your own healing journey where you're like, I believe as teachers, we can only lead as far as we've gone. So as you heal, you continue to share that information to help other people heal. So I love that. And I've seen you post stuff about, foods and products and all these things that we use that we don't realize are toxic for us. So I noticed you're on your lock journey. I started mine 2 years ago as well. Like these things that we are not aware of, that we weren't aware of before. And because our environments shape us, especially with our parents, I would love, I guess, you mentioned growing up with emotionally immature parents. So I would love for you to describe your present relationship, I guess, with your parents.
Oh, it's tricky. So I do have an active relationship with both of them. I'm not estranged from either of my parents. I grew up though as a daddy's girl. And I will say the relationship that I have with my father today is kind of disappointing compared to, our start. But, there were some issues that kind of came up and we just kind of never really got back on track. But we are on the track. We are just not, where I would like for us to be. But I definitely do still have a relationship with my father. I feel like he, throughout my entire life, was like the one that was on my side. He was the one that could see my pain. He was the one that could see how my mama was treating me. He was he was my cheerleader. My mom, the relationship with my mom is strained. It's awkward. I feel like it's forced at some times because I am very aware of the issues that I have with my mother. I am very aware of why I have these issues, where they stem from. Like, I am very clear on all of that. I have had grown woman put your big girl panties on conversations with my mother about how I feel. And literally I've laid it all out there on the line. And her response to all of that has been very disappointing. So my relationship as a daughter is strained, but my children's relationships as her grandsons is great. Like my oldest son, the way that he loves my mother, it gets on my nerves. Like, he loves this lady like ain't nobody like his granny. And I'm just like, ew, what are you going through here, son? But they have such a great relationship. And, I'm joking because I really do love that for him. Like, I love that he gets this version of her that I've never had. And so it's such a challenging position to be in because I'm witnessing her do all of the loving and nurturing and cuddling with my kids that she is unwilling to do with me. So that is it's a tough position to be in, but that is our current status.
I can relate on so many different levels. We spoke earlier on your podcast about mother wounds. We talked about how we end up in these narcissistic, abusive relationships that are connected to our mother wounds. So it's always interesting to see how the evolution or the difference in relationship that they have with their grandchildren. And I strongly believe, even with our own kids, they get each child has, in my experience, each child has got a different version of me as I evolve. Right. So my son probably got the greatest version of me because that's the version that's doing the work. Right. And my eldest had to deal with all of my immaturities and traumas and all of that. But I want to dig more into mother wounds. But before I do that, I was thinking about what you said about being the sensitive one and how being in an environment where other people weren't emotionally nurturing or, I guess, aware of your emotional needs, especially when you're considered sensitive. I want to know, I guess, how that affected you. Like, because I know for myself personally, very similar story to yours, where strained relationship with my mom, my dad's my cheerleader. I'm seen as the sensitive one, known as, HSP, highly sensitive person, empath, all those things. But I also have come to understand that it's part of a trauma response because we're hyper vigilant because of the environment that we were in. So I would love, I guess, to hear your perspective on how that's affected you.
I think that it has, I think it's been a gift and a curse. So the gift for sure in dating, so me being considered the sensitive one and basically like, shut up with all that, keep those emotions to yourself. That translated into, okay, I'm gonna keep these emotions to myself. I'm gonna be guarded. I'm gonna keep, like, you're not gonna see me cry. You're not gonna see me hurt. You could think what you think, but I don't need, that is what it kind of turned into. The gift in that is I got over breakups real quick. Like, I ain't never been the block. Like, if I'm done with you, I'm done with you, and there's no go back. So the ability to be able to cut off my emotions in that situation is a gift. The curse in it, I would say, is now that I am married to the man of my dreams, having to acknowledge those emotions, have tough conversations, communicate, my feelings, and it's expected. of me versus these situations where it was almost like frowned upon. And so a reoccurring conversation with my husband is, you ain't tell me that, like I just miss complete parts of information because I'm used to keeping I'm keeping my decisions, my business, my thoughts, I'm keeping it to myself. Mm-hmm. And so he's like, yo, I didn't even know that you was working on that. I didn't even know that you had this going on, but it's because my natural tendency is nobody wants me to share. So I'm going to keep it to myself. So that, again, this is the very evolved version of me learning, because the unevolved version of me is, I don't need to tell you everything I got going on. Why are you all in my business? Why you need to know everything? The evolved, mature version is, I'm not comfortable telling people my business because I could not trust the people who were closest to me. And that is an uncomfortable feeling to deal with, Yeah. So I would say, it's been a gift and a curse, and I am still trying to navigate like making it a normal part. Like I do it, but it still doesn't necessarily come natural, I would say.
I'm glad you're transparent about that part, because I feel like sometimes people will look at someone's life and admire what they see, but not understand the struggles that happen deep down. So it's like, they may see you on social media or hear you on your podcast, and they're like, I love Co. Like, I love her independence. I love this. I love this, but not understanding that there are things that are still a struggle for you. You push through it, but it's still a struggle for you. It's like, I'm trying to think of that common saying about, your comfort zone, like, stepping outside, being uncomfortable and doing it anyway. There we go. So I love that you are transparent about that, because I feel like people look at other people's lives and feel like it's unattainable for them. They don't realize it's possible for them too. It just requires pushing through the discomfort. It requires doing the uncomfortable. So I appreciate the transparency.
Let me say one more thing specifically to the single ladies, because marriage for a lot, and this is for the single ladies who are desiring marriage. If you are single and happy, baby, live your best life. But for the single women desiring marriage, one of the biggest, like, rudest awakenings was, as in love with my husband, like, there is no man out there that is better for me. This is my man. Mm-hmm. But there are still so many times that I am wrong and have to admit it, so many things I have to apologize about, so many deficits that I didn't realize that I have, that I am actively working on. And if you are not willing to do the work, if you have a take me as I am mentality, baby, he is going to leave you where you are. Okay. He is going to leave you in the dust, because these marriages, like a real healthy, happy marriage. Now, if you just want to be married because you want to tell people you got a man, whatever, that's not what I'm talking about. But like, a healthy marriage requires hard work. And it is so hard. It is so hard. Okay. It is so hard to see yourself every single day, because in a marriage, he sees you every day. He's going to tell you about yourself every day. The things that you don't even notice or recognize or realize that you're doing. And you can't get an attitude about it. You have to be willing to acknowledge it and work on it. And this is a part of marriage. So single women, go to therapy. I'm going to get off my soapbox, but please go to therapy before your man got to tell you about yourself. Please.
Yeah, listen, I love that you added that in, because I did a previous episode with a woman from Toronto who's also in the same space as us. And she was talking about the struggles of being in a healthy relationship after having a history of toxic relationships. And we related in our experiences where we're both presently very happy in our relationships and feel that we have found our life partner. Our heart is at home, but it comes with the struggles of working through the things that you have been working to heal. It comes with applying the lessons. So it's not all, roses and stuff all the time. It's being able to have those uncomfortable conversations. It's being able to sharpen each other. Like, if your partner is a mirror of you, they may do things that annoy you, and you have to ask yourself, well, why does that annoy me? What in me is that irking? Like, it's being able to, self-reflect and do all those things. So when we see couples that have been married for 25, 30 years, I think we've got friends that have been married and together, like, since we left high school, because we've known each other since high school, and being around them regularly and see how they work through their challenges, but are still connected. Like, it's just a beautiful thing. So we all, in our journey, as we are single, need to be working on ourselves, but even as we are in these relationships, because these are opportunities to, apply these things.
Because you will think you are healed, baby. And there have been so many times where I have to, baby, I apologize. I shouldn't have said that like that. And I will take it a step further and not even just say I apologize. I shouldn't have said it like that. But I have had to humble myself and say, I apologize. I shouldn't have said it like that. I'm just used to people responding this way or people meaning this. Like, I'm so proud of my emotional maturity, knowing that I was raised by wolves, knowing that I had zero foundation. I'm just figuring this out. Like, there is so much power in an apology. There is so much power in just, I was wrong. Let's figure this out together. But yes, you definitely have to be willing to do the hard work for sure.
That humility piece is big. I mean, I go to therapy every week. My partner goes to therapy. We've done couples therapy, and still my therapist sometimes is like, you said what to him? Yeah, I need you to deliver that in a nicer way. Like, I don't know how to sugarcoat sometimes.
Listen, you can be so healed until somebody gets you high, and then it's like that response, so when I pause, I feel like I have made so much progress. I'm like, ooh, I paused.
Yeah.
But these are the things you have to know to relate to anyone. Okay. We're talking about romantic relationships, but to relate to anyone, you should be working on yourself. Like, you should want to be the best version of yourself so that you can attract the best romantic and platonic relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we talk about working on ourselves, you even mentioned, being raised by wolves. So we know that, our mothers mold us both or often physically in the womb and also through their emotional interactions with us. But when they are not, I guess, providing our emotional needs, that can lead to mother wounds. So I want to talk about your mother wounds and I guess how you realized that you had mother wounds, and second, how you are presently working through that.
So the term mother wound is very new to me. Like, within the last year and a half, I've come across this term, but I have always sat down in therapy and said, I got mommy issues. Like, that is what would come out of my mouth. I just said I have mommy issues. That's what it was. And I will say what really, so I had normalized a mother that was not nurturing. And now, as a grown adult woman, I realized that a lot of Black mothers in the generation that they grew up in just were not naturally nurturing. They weren't lovey-dovey. You weren't sitting on their laps. And I had kind of normalized that's just how my mom is. Right? That's you. I accept you, whatever. But when I wouldn't even say when I became a mother. I think when I got pregnant is when I really started to realize that not only is this not normal, this is pretty toxic. This is weird. I think that was the word I was using. Like, this is weird. It was weird for me to be pregnant with my first child and my mother to make it known that she didn't want to help me. It was weird for me to be pregnant with my second child and for her to tell me that she wasn't going to like the first one as much as the second one as much as she likes the first one. It was weird. That's just what I would say. Like, it's weird that you're doing these things. But then when I started, like, hindsight became 2020, and I started just really looking back at, like, all of these times when I would just get riled up and get upset and we would have these arguments. It's been a history of manipulative, narcissistic behavior. But until I got grown and started to work on myself and become healed and, try to do this work, I didn't realize how unhealthy our relationship had become. So I would say that being a mother definitely, like, wrapped it up in a bow and was like, here is your mother wound. Like, you ain't know what to call it before. This is it. Because the relationship, and I won't even say the relationship, because my kids are only 18 months and 3, they're still baby. So of course I'm just all lovey-dovey all over them. But I just know the way I feel about my kids is not the way my mom feels about me.
Right.
That is what, becoming a mother kind of came with. It was like, I realized now I'm a mother who I am as a daughter. And that was kind of hurtful. So I would say that's kind of how I evolved into realizing what it actually was. Today, Did you ask me how am I dealing with it today?
Yeah, how you're coping.
Girl, therapy. I am in therapy. I will say talking about it though is therapeutic, you know, getting that and me and my friends, you know, like my close friends, if I have 5 close friends, 4 of them got mommy issues, you know, so it's kind of normalized in our friend group to where your mama crazy. Oh, your mama did what? My mama. I literally just had a girlfriend last night on the phone crying with me, 40 plus years old, crying on the phone about something her mom said to her. So I say all that to say, I don't know if there is a finish line for this. I don't know if there is an ideal situation that I am going to get to with my mother. I feel like at this point, we just have like a cordial relationship. You know, she's not calling to check on me, but she'll call to talk to her grandkids. You know, so we still, and she'll say hi to me when I pick up the phone, you know, so we are still having communication. She came to my house last week, you know, and she doesn't live in town, but she came in town and stopped by and, you know, spent the afternoon with her grandkids. So we have an active relationship. They don't have phones, so she has to go through me. Now, if they were adults, I do feel like we probably would, you know, have a non-existent relationship because she wouldn't truly have a, you know, a reason, you know, to call or check in. So I wish I had like a rainbow sunshine story of how it all worked out, but it is not working out like that. It is not. And the unfortunate part, the sad part, the part that I still sometimes am triggered by is her being okay with this being the way it is, you know, like her having in it, she has an it is what it is attitude, which I think is a generational thing. Again, I think it's like, I can't face what I did. I can't admit that I did something wrong. I can't be the problem. You know, she just has this thing that she is obviously going to take to the grave. And so I'm just trying to be a better mother to my kids. That's where I am right now with my mother wound, is focusing on my mothering and also trying to mother myself in the midst of all of this.
That part, the reparenting part, that's big. Like I'm listening to you share your experience with your mother, and I'm like trying not to get emotional because it's like, one, when you're an empath, you're feeling other people's emotions, but at the same time, the fact that I can completely relate to that, where I'm like, ouch, it's like feeling it all over again. You know, I feel like it's not just I want to say it's not just the Black community, but it's very common within the Black community for our mothers to be that way. And I don't know. Well, actually, I do have, I guess now that I'm doing my own work, some, I don't want to say understanding, but it's like knowing that they've experienced severe traumas that they don't want to talk about. So they're inside covering that up, knowing that they've had, you know, all these things that they are not doing the work to heal, that affects their relationship with their children. It is very common in the Black community to have stories like that. Like you said, I have a group of girlfriends and we like share our horror mom stories all the time. And sometimes I'm like, yeah, no, your mom's worse than my mom. Oh no, like we joke about it, but it's serious. And I know that there are women that are listening that can completely connect. I think in your case, like you said, where your kids are smaller, and if they were older, you may not have that same interaction with your mom. I can tell you from experience, my older kids, they have gotten to the point where they don't want to interact with her toxicity. So they block her on social. They don't accept her calls. They have no desire to have a relationship with her because they've seen how she's dealt with me over the years. And now I'm at the point where I've gone at times over a year without seeing my mom or even having a phone call with her. And people who don't know the dynamics or don't know you're hurt will say things like, oh, but that's your mom. Hopefully you guys can figure it out, blah, 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 blah. But no matter how much you try to communicate to your parent or your mom, the hurt that they've caused, or reminding them of things that happened, because they live in this land of Delulu, you know, there's no accountability, there's no acceptance. Therefore, on our case, there can be no healing. So the reparenting part has been very huge for me. So when you said that, I was like, yep, I connect right there to that.
It's tough. It is very tough. And it's tough so one of the things I feel like that generation kind of uses is, well, or their belief is, as long as they're not as bad as their parents were, I'm not abusing you, so you should be good. What are you complaining about? And I think too, we start to minimize our own pain because we compare it to people who were, and I don't want to say truly abused, because emotional abuse is abuse, but we start to think, oh, well, it wasn't that bad, or well, she wasn't. And even that is unfair to you. There's one thing to give grace. There's one thing to understand that, our mamas are human. They don't have it all figured out. They are not perfect. That's one thing. But to minimize your own pain, to sweep your own issues under the rug because you're trying to, not shame somebody else or not make somebody else look bad, that is not healthy either. And you literally will just hurt yourself because you're not going to face your issues for the risk of, making your mom look bad. There's so much shame in this specifically, which is why I think this conversation usually doesn't come up.
I agree, especially in the Black community, because that shame piece, like I had a woman on the podcast, maybe a month or so ago, and she's in her late 50s. She has accomplished so much in life, has all the accolades checked off. And she's like, my mother's never told me she loves me. And they have an active relationship. And I said, pardon? She's like, she's never said the words, I love you. She's like, I know she loves me, but she just never said it. And I was like, ouch. Like, imagine never saying that to your child.
Makini, I did a poll on my Instagram page, and I want to say it was close to 70% of the ladies who responded said that they had never heard their mother say, I love you. So when we start talking about how Black women are this and that, and they got attitudes, what would you have if your mother never said, I love you? How would you present yourself? What kind of guard would you have up if the one person who should have loved you on sight may have loved you, but couldn't even communicate that to you? I'm sure our mothers loved us, right? We could say that. But if you couldn't show it, if you couldn't express it, if you couldn't communicate it, then, I can't give you credit for that. So yeah, it's not rare, unfortunately.
Like, it is so hurtful when I hear other stories. And then obviously, those trigger you back to like your own memories. And I haven't been able to openly talk about some of my mother wounds until recently, like this year, 2024, because I didn't want to hurt her. But then I think back and I'm like, my mom, I was at a church barbecue. I attended an event with my mom to one of her churches. And she went up there to tell a testimony on the microphone and starts telling the story about wanting to abort a child and how she couldn't do it on the table, and how this child turned out to be, all these things. And then she turns to me and says, oh, she's right here. And I thought, okay, growing up, my mother used to say to us, when we misbehaved, I should have went to Dr. Morgenthaler. And Dr. Morgenthaler back in the 80s was a famous abortion doctor in Toronto. Okay. So I used to think that was a joke. And in my 40s to learn, no, she actually went like on the table. She didn't plan on having you. So the feeling and remembering all, like, it brought back so many things growing up. And when I hear other stories of other women with their mom wounds, and it's just like you said, not only just the reparenting, but being a better parent to our children, breaking those generational curses, breaking those things. Like, my hands is literally shaking. I'm like holding back so many emotions right now. Just being the best version of ourselves so that when we interact with our children, we help guide them to be better humans that we put out into this world. Because like you said, so many people walking around with all of these wounds and all these traumas that we don't talk about.
I think too, it gets swept under the rug because when you do talk about it, I don't know. I think when you do talk about it, when you open up the can of worms, the shame that you're bringing to your family, you know, like, so when I did my episode and I mentioned earlier, like we're about to be at 100,000 views on YouTube, and baby, YouTube is really tough. Okay. So I'm proud of this, but it's this motherhood conversation, right? Thousands and thousands of people came out of the woodworks on this conversation, clips gone viral on social media. My family, I'm willing to bet they've never listened to my podcast. They pretend like they don't even know I host a podcast. But when I tell you this episode, this clip has circulated the family group chat, my mother is not on social media, but she's calling me up, talking about how she's the new topic of the conversation on my podcast. My sister, who we don't have a relationship at all, but she has issues with my mom too. My sister is the one who sent my mom the episode as if I'm just the one that has this problem. Now, these are conversations that me and my sister have had as adults. So I know how she feels about my mother. So for you to turn around and send this as if I'm the crazy one and I'm just delulu, you know, how could she be talking about my mama? That is crazy. And I dealt with a lot of the backlash, but the engagement that I got, the comments that I got, the people coming out the woodwork, like I have been in tears reading those comments. And that showed me that this is bigger. This is bigger than me. This is bigger than just my mama. I can't spare her feelings when all of these women are literally pouring their hearts out because they've never had a safe space to have this conversation. So this ain't even at this point, like as uncomfortable as it is talking about my mama, it's like somebody got to talk about it at some point because we are in bondage based on this shame that we are holding on to.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mentioned earlier on when I was on your podcast where the Dr. Brene Brown's quote that shame loves secrecy. But there was a therapist at an event that I was at last Sunday, and she said that shame is like mold. It grows in the darkness. So when we keep these things in the dark, it continues to affect our self-esteem. It continues to affect our self-image. It continues to affect, you know, how we move through the world. So it's important to shed light on it, and it doesn't have to be, you know, on a podcast, but being able to talk about it, to not have these things in secrecy so you feel shame about it. Like when we are open about our journeys and our stories, not only are we able to connect on a deeper level with people, like it could be, you know, people in your friend circle, in your church group, whatever, wherever you feel safe, it helps create, you know, that social proofing, that sense of community, which is a part of us building our resilience.
Yep. And then just getting it out. That's so freeing. Getting it out and then connecting with people who can just listen sometimes, or who can understand and who can say, dang, my mama crazy too. Because when you feel like you're the only one that has a terrible mother, it's like, man, what did I do to deserve this? But when you can take it off of being your fault, that is when I think you can start to free yourself.
Yeah. Like you said something there and it just triggered another memory for me where, you know, I started distancing myself from my mother during the pandemic. And I was on the phone with a girlfriend who was in my same friend group that we compare our mamas. And I was dropping off groceries and a Mother's Day card to my mom. And I called her and asked her to come down to the lobby to collect the gifts I am giving to her. And this woman was like, she's on a church Zoom, blah, blah, like making it seem like it's a burden for her to come downstairs on Mother's Day to collect these gifts I'm trying to give to her. Okay. And I drove away and I said to my girlfriend, I will never be buying this woman anything again for Mother's Day. She does not appreciate me as her daughter. She does not appreciate the love that I am trying to give to her. I'm not doing this no more. But if I were to, you know, people that are in the family or whatever, you know, they hear that I don't contact my mother on Mother's Day anymore. I don't, you know, do these things. They're like, oh, you're such a horrible daughter or whatever.
You're terrible.
Not like,
she's still your mom. Like, it's insane. It's insane.
If this was a dude beating the crap out of you and you decide, you know what, I am not going to stay connected to this dude. Like, you don't hear people saying, well, you know, why did you leave? Like, he wasn't beating you that bad. Like,
you know what's crazy in that though, Makini? And I told you that I was just on the phone last night, you know, being the shoulder to cry on with somebody going through something similar. One of the commonalities in all of these stories is this need to dismiss. It's like very dismissive. Like, I want you to know that I don't care about you. What is that? Maybe I need to talk to another therapist
That's a
about
lack of
what
empathy.
is that?
Like, I feel like that's definitely a lack of empathy. Like, I don't have the ability to not care. Even people I do not like, even people that have done me wrong. There are so many times where I'm like, I actually feel for them. I feel bad for them. So I feel like the people that intentionally don't care or don't want to care, that's a lack of empathy on their part.
It's very sad.
Very, very.
It's very sad.
Very sad. I guess I would like to know, like, given all of the things that you have experienced in your childhood and your adulthood, what would you say have been some of the best or worst decisions that you've ever made because of them?
Oh, best and worst decisions. So I feel like the greatest gift that I got from growing up like Cinderella, except it was my real mom and my real sister and not steps. I feel like I had to turn inward so much that I learned how to depend on myself. That, I didn't have necessarily the natural support around me. So I had to create a supportive environment within me. And because of that, I, walked away from my career, as a classroom teacher and never looked back. I have consistently over my entire life made a decision about what I wanted and, been diligent in doing the work to go after it. So I think my ability to bet on myself, my desire to prove myself, that's a big thing with these mother wounds. It's like, I'm going to make you love me. I'm going to perform myself into your heart. And no, no, that's not going to work out for me like that. But it has worked out in that I have, learned how to show up. I have learned how to bet on myself. I think best decision for sure was start, becoming an entrepreneur, getting out of the classroom. That was one of the best decisions. I made a decision very early that I was going to be a wife, which very few women in my family, consciously and intentionally make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that stemmed from my mommy issues necessarily, but these are things that were not the norm in my family or how I grew up. Now, obviously my parents, they were married till I was 16, but they didn't even have the ideal marriage. But I would say that I've always been willing to do the difficult thing to get the result and not the comfortable thing to just get, the status quo. So that, that has been kind of wrapped up in several, decisions I would say that I've made, but that has kind of been the root of the good decisions. The root of the bad decisions, I think I'm pretty hard on myself. And so I think that I have quit things too soon. I think I have bowed out gracefully too early, and didn't, complete things, didn't finish things, didn't carry out the mission because I, started to convince myself that it wasn't for me or, this wasn't the right thing. So, stopping my first podcast is one of the worst decisions that I made. So, I had Confessions of a Workaholic until, 2021. And then I started Girl Stop Playing in 2022. But when I took that break and like had a baby, sat down, did all of the things, that was one of the worst decisions that I made. And I know that it was rooted in me just moving on too soon, basically. So everything is rooted to that mama though, some way or another.
Yeah, listen, girl, what people don't understand is when you have mother wounds, it leads to low self-esteem. It leads to lack of emotional awareness. It leads to, your inability to self-soothe. It leads to feeling like, you have trouble nurturing the other relationships around you because you feel like those relationships are not within reach. So being able to first acknowledge that you have a mother wound is one, but being what's the word I'm looking for? Doing the work to reparent and work through that. And also I think we have, as a society, underestimated the power of healthy boundaries. Because before I learned about, it's okay to actually keep certain family members at arm's length because I used to be that, oh, but they're family. You have to invite them. You have to. No, I'm going to remove the title. I'm going to look at your behavior. I'm going to deal with you accordingly. Being able to be okay with going no contact with unhealthy, toxic family members. Because I think as a society, especially in the Black community, we've allowed too many toxic, manipulative, very unhealthy ways to be our norm. And it's not okay. And it's creating all these different levels of trauma. It's creating all these different levels of hurt, generational chains, all these things. And what you said before about like one of the best decisions that you've ever made and how it's impacted you, it made me think about a book that I'm presently reading called, what is it? The New Happy? Yeah, The New Happy. It's about getting happiness right in a world that got it wrong. And there's three old happy lies that we tell ourselves. So one is perfection, where, everything has to be perfect in order for us to be happy, in order for things to be good. But that's not actually true because we're all imperfectly, nobody's perfect. And two, this sense of achievement. And I think for me, the light bulb moment was I used to chase all these accolades, all these achievements, trying to make my mother proud and realizing she's never going to say I'm proud of you. Like
she could be proud, but you'll never hear it.
Never say it. Exactly. Right. And then the third one is isolation, where because of that conditioning, it's like we are taught to go inward and think that we have to do it ourselves because we can't count on the people that are supposed to be there for us. So I think those are some important points that you brought up. And again, I appreciate your transparency. And I would love if you could tell the listeners where they could stay connected with you, where they can learn more about you and from you, and especially listen to your podcast.
Yes. Thank you so much for the opportunity. My podcast is called Girls Stop Playing, and I'm helping you stop playing with your potential. You can find it on all podcast platforms as well as YouTube. On social media, I am at Koereyelle, and I would love to stay connected. I love to keep the conversations going. I am very, very, very passionate about creating a safe space to have these conversations that will move us forward. So thank you for the opportunity.
No problem. I'll definitely have all the links where they can connect with you in the detailed section so they don't have to search too far.
Thank you.
And you're welcome. And the final segment of the show, it's kind of like a rapid fire. You can answer one word or one sentence, whatever comes to mind. But also, I don't like to be confined. I'm claustrophobic. I don't like to be put into a box. So if you feel the need to expand, you're more than welcome to do so.
Okay.
All right. Name a book that has changed or greatly impacted your life.
The Alchemist.
Okay. What new beliefs, behaviors, or habits have improved your life in the last 5 years?
Ooh, new belief. So specifically, as an entrepreneur, feeling like I was doing purpose-led work, feeling like I was doing God's work, but making the mistake of trying to do God's work without God. So a new philosophy, a new principle is, that whole God is my CEO. It's like, I'm not making a decision unless I get confirmation about it. So big lesson. I can't do God's work without God.
Amen. Amen to that. Okay. When was the last time you've cried?
I cry so much since becoming a mother. I mean, I can see a social media post and it just breaks me down into tears. I would say the last time I cried, last week doing a podcast interview, actually. Yep. I cried last week. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's deep. It's heavy out here in these podcast streets, man.
Yep. It's not like Instagram where it's like the highlight reel. Like I love podcasting for getting like those deep, deep conversations.
Yes.
Okay. When was the last time you apologized to someone?
Girl, I probably apologized to my husband this morning. I apologize probably daily to my husband or my kids because I get something wrong on a daily basis.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Last but not least, what do you wish women would do more of?
See that pause? Did you see that? Progress in the pause. I wish women would, what do I wish women would do more of? I wish women would adopt the mindset of selfishness not being a sin. Not looking at self-care as a luxury and really realizing that self-care is a necessity, because we are the pulse of the world. Like when we are not well, ish around us starts to, hit the fan. And so we are usually the last one on the to-do list. We're the first one to get moved to the next day. We're the first one, like we are our last priority. So that would be my wish, is that we stop looking at selfishness as like a sinful thing.
Here I get goosebumps again. I love that, because you're saying that is your wish for women, but that's actually, if we read between the lines of the 10 Commandments, it's in there. So the first one is to love God, and the second is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Well, hello, you need to love yourself first, right?
Yep. You got to start there, right?
Yeah.
Has to start there.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Koereyelle, for your transparency, for just being so open to share your journey. I know that, vulnerability definitely takes courage, and people have a challenge with that. But when they see women like yourself being open and honest and transparent, it can actually help them to unpack what's inside of them and to tap into their true potential. So I appreciate your time, your energy. I do not take it lightly. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you for the opportunity. I hope y'all enjoyed the conversation.
To all you healers out there, until next time, subscribe on all platforms. Don't forget to rate the show and leave us a review on Apple Podcast. I just want to thank each and every one of you that continues to listen each week to help the show rank globally in the top 1.5% of most popular podcasts out there. And I want to challenge you to send this to all your girlfriends with mother wounds. I want to challenge you to share this with anyone that you think would receive value from hearing Koereyelle's story. Feel free to screenshot this week's episode and tag us with your aha moments. You can tag Koereyelle at KOEREVELLE, and you can tag myself at The Real Makini Smith. A healthy community is a healing community, and a healing community is full of hope because it has seen its own people weather, survive, and thrive. So let's continue to heal her.